The biting wind of winter swept through the narrow streets of the medieval village, its icy tendrils creeping under the doors and through the cracks of every modest home. Smoke spiraled upward from thatched roofs, mingling with the pale gray sky, as villagers wrapped themselves in coarse wool cloaks to shield against the chill. For those living in the Middle Ages, life was a daily struggle, and winter was the most formidable adversary. Crops had long been harvested, and the granaries were not always as full as they needed to be. Hunger gnawed at bellies, and sickness spread quickly through the damp, crowded quarters. Yet, in the heart of this season of scarcity and survival, there was one beacon of hope that united all: the celebration of Christmas. Christmas in the Middle Ages was not the lavish and commercialized holiday we know today. It was a time steeped in religious significance, communal traditions, and a deep sense of reverence. For families like that of Henri, a blacksmith in the village of St. Martin, it was a season of mixed emotions. Henri's forge had been quieter this year. The poor harvest meant fewer villagers could afford new tools or repairs. As he hammered away at the glowing iron in his modest workshop, he worried about how he would provide for his family during the festive season. His wife, Marguerite, tried to reassure him, her voice gentle but firm. "The Lord provides, Henri. Christmas is not about wealth. It's about faith and family." The season of Christmas began weeks before the day itself with a period known as Advent. For medieval Christians, Advent was not filled with feasts or festivities, but was instead a time of fasting, reflection, and preparation. The Church dictated strict abstinence from meat, dairy, and other indulgent foods, urging its followers to focus on spiritual nourishment rather than earthly pleasures. Each week, a new candle was lit on the Advent wreath, its flame symbolizing hope and the approach of Christ's birth. In Henri's household, this ritual was observed faithfully. His young daughter, Claire, would gaze in awe at the flickering light, her small hands clasped in prayer as Marguerite recited passages from the scriptures. Advent was also a time of communal gathering. Despite the hardships of winter, the villagers found solace in coming together for evening prayers at the small stone chapel that stood at the edge of the village. The chapel was humble, its walls damp and cold, but within its confines, there was warmth, both from the roaring fire that burned in the hearth and from the shared faith of those who gathered there. The priest, Father Thomas, spoke of the importance of humility, generosity, and perseverance during the season. His words resonated deeply with Henri, who found strength in the collective hope of his community. As Advent progressed, preparations for Christmas began in earnest. The village buzzed with quiet activity as families worked to make the season special despite their limited means. Women baked bread and simple pastries, adding dried fruits or honey when they could afford it. Men ventured into the nearby forests to gather evergreen branches, holly and ivy, which were used to decorate homes and the chapel. These natural adornments carried profound symbolism. The evergreen represented eternal life, a reminder that even in the depths of winter, life endured. Holly, with its sharp leaves and red berries, was said to evoke the crown of thorns and the blood of Christ. For the children, these preparations were magical. Claire watched with wide eyes as her father fashioned a small wooden angel to place above their hearth, her laughter filling the air as she helped her mother hang sprigs of ivy by the windows. Christmas Eve marked the culmination of these weeks of preparation. The entire village gathered at the chapel for midnight mass, the most sacred service of the year. The chapel was transformed for the occasion, its interior illuminated by the soft glow of countless candles. The air was heavy with the mingling scents of pine and beeswax, and the faint sound of hymns echoed against the stone walls. At the center of the altar stood a nativity scene, its figures carved by the village carpenter. Henri had contributed as well, crafting the small iron star that hung above the scene, its sharp edges glinting in the candlelight. For Claire, the Mass was a moment of wonder. She clutched her mother's hand tightly as the priest recited the story of Christ's birth, her imagination painting vivid pictures of the humble stable in Bethlehem. After the service, the villagers returned to their homes, their hearts filled with a quiet sense of joy and anticipation. The children were tucked into bed, and the adults busied themselves with final preparations for the feast. In Henry's household, the table was modestly set, the centerpiece a loaf of bread that Marguerite had shaped into the form of a dove. "It's a symbol of peace," she explained to Claire, who marveled at the intricate design. Henri placed his wooden angel beside the bread, a small but heartfelt contribution to their humble celebration. Christmas morning arrived with a stillness that seemed to blanket the village like the snow covering the fields. The air was crisp, each breath visible in the freezing temperatures. For Henri and his family, the day began with a sense of quiet anticipation. Marguerite had risen early to prepare their modest Christmas meal, her hands skillfully kneading dough for the bread that would accompany the roasted goose they had saved for this special occasion. Claire awoke to the smell of spices and warmth, her excitement barely contained as she hurried to the hearth to see if anything had been left there for her. In medieval times, Christmas gifts were a rarity, especially for families like Henry's, whose resources were stretched thin. When gifts were exchanged, they were often small, handmade tokens, a carved toy, a knitted scarf, or a simple pouch of herbs. For Claire, the wooden angel her father had carved earlier in the season was the most beautiful thing she could imagine. She held it tightly, her wide eyes sparkling with delight. "It's perfect, Papa," she said, her voice filled with sincerity that warmed Henry's heart. These small gestures carried immense meaning, serving as reminders of the thought and care behind each gift rather than their material value. The Christmas feast was the centerpiece of the day, a moment when even the poorest families found a way to celebrate. For Henri, the meal was a labor of love. The goose, seasoned with herbs and slowly roasted over the fire, filled their small home with an aroma that made their mouths water. Marguerite prepared a simple soup of leeks and onions, using the last of their winter stores. The bread, shaped into intricate designs, was baked to perfection in the communal oven shared by the village. For dessert, there were honey cakes, their sweetness a rare indulgence. As the family gathered around the table, there was a sense of gratitude that transcended the food before them. "We may not have much," Henri said, raising his cup of spiced cider, "but what we have, we share with love." The feast was not confined to individual households. The spirit of community was deeply ingrained in medieval Christmas celebrations. In the village square, a large communal fire was lit, and neighbors gathered to share their food and stories. The older children played games in the snow, their laughter ringing through the crisp air, while the younger ones huddled near the fire, enchanted by tales of the nativity and local folklore. One of the most anticipated events was the Mummers' Play, performed by a group of villagers who donned colorful masks and costumes to act out stories that blended biblical themes with humor and moral lessons. Claire watched in awe as the performers exaggerated their gestures and voices, their antics drawing laughter from the crowd. As the day gave way to evening, the villagers returned to their homes, their spirits lifted by the shared joy of the day. Henri sat by the fire, his tools temporarily set aside, as he reflected on the significance of the season. Christmas, he realized, was not about material abundance but about the richness of connection, to faith, to family, and to the community. This sense of interconnectedness was reinforced by the 12 days of Christmas, which stretched the celebration beyond a single day and deepened its meaning. The 12 days of Christmas were a time of extended joy and reflection, stretching from December 25th to January 6th. Unlike the singular day of celebration we often recognize now, medieval Christmas was a season unto itself, filled with unique customs and traditions that evolved over centuries. Each day brought its own meaning and rituals, blending sacred observances with local folklore and community gatherings. For Henry's family, these days were an opportunity to continue the spirit of giving, faith, and togetherness that had defined Christmas Day. On the second day of Christmas, Henri and Claire ventured into the forest to gather more firewood and evergreen branches. The snow crunched beneath their feet, and their breaths hung in the cold air as they searched for the perfect sprigs of holly to add to their decorations. "Why do we use holly, Papa?" Claire asked, her small fingers brushing against the sharp leaves. Henri smiled, crouching down to her level. "The holly reminds us of Christ's sacrifice," he explained. "The red berries are like drops of blood, and the leaves are like the crown of thorns." Claire nodded solemnly, her young mind absorbing the weight of the symbolism. Moments like these, shared between parent and child, were the quiet heartbeats of the season. Back in the village, the 12 days were marked by communal events that brought neighbors together. On the third day, the square was transformed into a lively scene as villagers gathered for a procession. Carrying candles and singing hymns, they moved through the streets in a solemn yet joyous display of faith and unity. The soft glow of the candles lit up the faces of the participants, creating a sense of warmth and connection in the cold winter night. Marguerite joined the procession with other women from the village, their voices harmonizing in a hymn that spoke of hope and salvation. As the days passed, the celebrations grew more festive. On the fifth day, the mummers returned to the square for another performance, this time enacting a comedic retelling of the story of the Magi. Their exaggerated costumes and antics drew laughter from the crowd, especially from the children, who delighted in the playful chaos. For Henri, these moments of shared joy were a reminder of the resilience and creativity of his community. Even in the face of hardship, they found ways to come together and celebrate the season. The 8th day of Christmas, New Year's Day, carried its own set of customs and significance. In the church, a special Mass was held to mark the beginning of the new year, offering prayers for health, prosperity, and peace. Families exchanged small tokens of goodwill, such as bundles of dried herbs or hand-sewn pouches, as gestures of gratitude and hope. For Henri, this day was a time of quiet reflection. He sat by the fire, his tools temporarily set aside, as he thought about the challenges and blessings of the past year. "We have endured much," he said to Marguerite, "but we have also been given much. Let us face the coming year with faith and courage." The 12 days of Christmas culminated in Epiphany, celebrated on January 6th. This day, commemorating the visit of the Magi to the Christ child, was both a sacred and festive occasion. In the village, the day began with a solemn Mass, during which the priest spoke of the journey of the wise men and the gifts they brought: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. For Claire, the story of the Magi was a source of fascination. She imagined their long journey across deserts and mountains, guided by the brilliant star that Henri had recreated in iron for the church's nativity scene. "Do you think they were afraid, Papa?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Henri shook his head. "They had faith, my child. That star was their guide, just as our faith guides us. As Epiphany festivities extended beyond the church and into the homes of the villagers, for Henry's family, the day was marked by a final meal that brought the Christmas season to a close. Marguerite prepared a cake filled with dried fruits and spices, a rare and treasured treat for the family. It was shaped like a crown in honor of the Magi, and Claire delighted in the tradition of finding the small token baked inside. Whoever found it would be declared king or queen of the day, a playful custom that brought laughter and joy to the household. The village also held its own unique traditions for Epiphany. One of the most cherished was the blessing of homes, a ritual led by Father Thomas. The priest visited each household, marking the doors with chalk and offering prayers for protection and prosperity in the coming year. Henri welcomed him warmly, the simple act of blessing their modest home filling him with a sense of peace. As Father Thomas sprinkled holy water over the hearth, he spoke words that resonated deeply. May this house be a place of warmth, love, and faith. With Epiphany came a sense of closure, yet also renewal. The evergreen branches that had adorned the church and homes were carefully removed and burned, their fragrant smoke rising to the heavens. This act symbolized the end of the Christmas season and the return to the rhythms of daily life. For Henri, it was a bittersweet moment. The joy and connection of the past 12 days had been a welcome reprieve from the hardships of winter, but he knew that the lessons of Christmas would carry them forward. "We are stronger together," he said to Marguerite as they watched the flames dance in the hearth. "And we have been blessed, even in the smallest of ways." The days that followed Epiphany were quiet, the village settling back into its familiar routines. Henri returned to his forge, the rhythmic clanging of hammer on iron once again filling the air. Yet there was a renewed sense of purpose in his work. The Christmas season had reminded him of the importance of his craft, not just as a means of livelihood but as a way to serve his community. The tools he made would help his neighbors till their fields, build their homes, and provide for their families. Each piece he crafted carried with it the spirit of the season, a reflection of the values that had been reaffirmed during the 12 days of Christmas. For Claire, the memories of the season lingered like the warmth of a fire long after the embers had faded. She cherished the wooden angel her father had carved, placing it carefully on the small shelf above her bed. It was a symbol of the love and care that defined her family, a reminder of the joy they had shared even in the face of adversity. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought of the stories she had heard, the journey of the Magi, the humble birth of Christ, and the enduring light of faith. These tales, passed down through generations, had become a part of her own story, shaping her understanding of the world and her place within it. The conclusion of Christmas in the Middle Ages was not marked by grand farewells or lingering celebrations, but by a quiet return to normalcy, imbued with the lessons of the season. It was a time to carry forward the values of generosity, faith, and resilience into the challenges of the new year. For families like Henry's, these values were not confined to the Christmas season but were woven into the fabric of their daily lives. As the snow began to melt and the first signs of spring appeared on the horizon, the memories of Christmas remained. The wooden angel, the iron star in the church, the shared meals, and the laughter around the fire were all reminders of what truly mattered. In a world that often felt harsh and unyielding, Christmas had been a beacon of light, a time when faith overcame fear, love triumphed over hardship, and community provided strength. These were the gifts of Christmas in the Middle Ages, and they remain timeless, resonating with us even today.